Hello and welcome. I'm Sumeet from S.i.Systems, and you're listening to A Call for Action, how Canadian tech leaders are taking the gender gap beyond the dialogue. Today, I'm joined by Traci, our Chief Executive Officer, and we're diving into an open and candid conversation. So let's jump in and explore how real change is happening right now. So Traci, with this year's International Women's Day theme of Accelerate Action, what does this mean for S.i.Systems?
Well, what it means for S.i.Systems to meet is that we're putting some urgency around I would say, taking action and having urgency around the promotion and continued around gender parity in leadership and in our leadership. So, our current estimate out there right now is that it's going to take 5 generations to reach full gender parity. And so our theme this year is about shortening that timeline. So that's what we mean by accelerating action to maybe if we can reduce within S.i.Systems that it doesn't take 5 generations, that maybe it only takes 3 or 4.
Perfect. Thank you. How do you, or I guess have you also, fostered a workplace culture that not only attracts women, but also ensures that they thrive and feel valued in your organization?
It's an interesting question. And one of the things that I've noticed throughout my career is that I've always worked with people who have really valued all of their team members, irrespective of gender. But one way that really has accelerated gender parity in leadership is that the company has to have an intentionality around it. It doesn't happen by accident. And the reason that it doesn't happen by accident is just because of generations of doing things a certain way. You have to be intentional for those things to shift. And I'm going to give you an example. So there's data that show that the way that a woman will look at a job description and the way a man will look at a job description is very different. When a woman, and if you, so in this case study, both people are 50% qualified for the job. The woman looks at the job description and says, I can't do that. I don't have that. I don't have that. I'm not going to apply. The man looks at the job description and goes, I have that one and I have that one. I got it. And he applies. And so then what happens is you have more male applicants than female applicants, not because there were less female applicants that were qualified, but it's just the way that the job was being looked at and what he or she felt made her qualified for the role. And so when you know data like that, then you can action against it.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that's the case, good or bad, right or wrong, if you know that's the case, when you post something internally and you're looking for the best applicants to join the roster of consideration, you have to know as senior leadership that that behavior exists. So rather than waiting to see who applies and knowing that likely there are very qualified women in the organization that don't apply, what you need to do is you need to go tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, Sally, you should apply for this role. It doesn't mean that Sally's going to get the job. It doesn't mean that, Bobby isn't better qualified for the job, but what you need more participation. And we know that today, hopefully in a few generations, this is not the case, but today we know that extra little nudge is required to increase your talent pool that you're choosing for consideration for roles. So that's one small example of being intentional on how you get more gender parity in senior level roles is you have to recognize that it's valuable to have multiple types of people in leadership positions. And then you have to recognize what might be standing in your way and then very intentionally go after and change that.
Perfect. Thank you for that advice.
That's better.
Last question,
Okay.
Traci. In your opinion, what role can staffing agencies play in accelerating the adoption of inclusive and gender equitable practices across various industries?
So, one of the reasons that I love the industry that we're in is that we have the ability to influence not only our own organization, but so many others throughout the country. We work with some of the top, biggest companies in the country. We work with some of the most talented individuals that are out there in our profession. And so, our actions and they speak very loudly. On one hand, we have to be certainly delicate that our buyers and our consultants come from every walk of life. And so you have to walk the fine line of not necessarily pushing your beliefs, but I think leading by example and showing that having gender parity, having a diverse leadership team, having a diverse talent pool only makes companies stronger. I also really am encouraged by when our customers actually ask us for this advice to sit down with their teams during International Women's Day or during Pride Month or during pick a topic. Oftentimes we get asked to have a seat at that table to have those discussions because we have a broader range than their singular organization. The other thing that it helps me is I can see what one company is doing and then help share those best practices among others plus our own. A great example of that is PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I think that PwC is a leader in this space. They certainly have a lot to be admired in terms of just inclusive practices, as well as proving that those inclusive practices actually help their business, which I think doesn't particularly answer this question, Sumeet, but something that I would love to just say on the topic is
Sure.
that when we talk about whether it's gender parity or inclusiveness at large, at the end of the day, I'm a CEO and I'm responsible for increasing shareholder value. I have a duty and responsibility to make sure that we return on the investment that people have made in our organization. It's sort of raw to think about it that way, but every for-profit company is in business to
Yep.
make sure that they're profitable. What I find is that there is an economic reason to have gender parity. 50% of the population is female. And if you do not create an environment whereby 50% of your talent base
Yeah.
is excited to show up and give their best, then you're missing out on an opportunity to have a fruitful business. If you look at graduation rates out of universities, for the first time in a long time, there are higher levels of female graduates than male graduates. If you choose to not have an environment that embraces and makes women feel welcome and comfortable, you will not have a thriving business.
Mm-hmm.
So now, fundamentally at my core, I am a believer in gender parity because I have seen whether it was my mom who was a working mother, my grandmother was a working mother, which was very rare back in the day.
Yeah.
And I too am a working mom. Being able to create an environment where our children, be they boys or girls as your children, seeing their mother play those types of roles and being able to balance everything that comes along with parenthood and professional lives, I think is really important. But even if you don't agree with that, right? Even if someone were to fall into the camp where there's maybe some more traditional values, as a business steward, 50% of your working population is female.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to struggle to get your company to where it needs to be until you create an environment where everyone, regardless of gender, feels welcome and ready to perform at their top levels.
That was great. Well, Traci, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. It's truly been a very inspiring conversation. And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Let's continue this important conversation and keep pushing for change in this industry. Until next time, take care and keep taking action. Thank you all.
Thank you.